I'm sometimes asked to define harm reduction. What does harm reduction mean? And the best way I've found to explain it is to give 4 definitions. The first definition of harm reduction is about the origins of harm reduction. It's harm reduction as needle exchange programs. It's the notion that emerged in the early 1980s when people began to realize, first in the Netherlands, in Europe, and elsewhere, that HIV was spreading not just through heterosexual and homosexual sex, but also by injecting drug users sharing their injection equipment, right? And it was the Dutch who 40 years ago said, you know what, if this is happening, yes, we want the drug users to stop, but let's just put at the drop-in centers, here's a bucket to drop your dirty needles, here's a bucket to pick up some clean needles. It was just a pragmatic intervention to try to get people living disorderly lives to basically practice harm reduction, to reduce the risk of getting and transmitting HIV. So harm reduction begins there. But harm reduction then broadens out to the second definition. And harm reduction defined as any policy or intervention that seeks to reduce the negative consequences of a risky, dangerous, or otherwise, or what some people regard as immoral activity. It's harm reduction as motorcycle helmets and as football helmets. It's harm reduction as seat belts. It's harm reduction as designated driver norms for people who get drunk but should not drive so somebody else will drive. It's harm reduction with overdose by making the antidote naloxone available, or by having Good Samaritan 911 laws so people can call emergency services if a friend overdoses without worrying about the police arresting them. It's harm reduction in all the most commonsensical, pragmatic ways. Then there's the third definition of harm reduction, and that's harm reduction as public policy. It's the one that says that the best drug policy is the one that accomplishes 2 harm reduction objectives, that seeks, on the one hand, to reduce the negative consequences of drug use, the addiction, the death, the disease, the criminality that grows out of asocial behavior, but that also tries to reduce the negative harms, the negative consequences of drug prohibitionist or unproductive drug regulatory policies. The crime, the violence, the corruption, the inefficiencies, the black markets, the violation of human rights. It's therefore the one that says the best drug policy is the one that balances 2 harm reduction objectives, reducing the harms of drugs and the harms of drug control policies. The fourth definition really falls into 2 parts, and they both have an ethical dimension. So 4A is the one that says harm reduction is about meeting the drug user where they're at. It's about meeting them, in the way in which an abstinence-only approach, if somebody who's got a problem with drugs shows up at an abstinence-only program, they're asked, are you ready to stop using drugs? Because if you say no, I can't help you. And come back another time when you're ready to stop using drugs. But it's the opposite approach when you go to a harm reduction program or a harm reduction, a helper. That person doesn't ask, are you ready to stop drugs? That person asks, what is it you want to accomplish in life? I mean, what are you trying to do? Do you want to get a legal job? Do you want to stabilize your life? Do you want to regain custody of your children? Do you want to take better care of your parents or your family? Let's focus on what you want to accomplish in life and then figure out the ways in which your drug use is getting in the way and how we can help you to manage or control your drug use, or maybe one day stop your drug use so that you can better lead the life you want to lead. It's that basic idea of not demonizing people solely because of the drug that they're using. And that leads to part 4B of the definition of harm reduction. That goes to the core principle that really drives most of us involved in drug policy reform and in harm reduction more broadly.